There is a kind of love people stop believing in, the kind that asks for nothing in return. They learn early that affection must be earned through achievement, obedience, or emotional restraint. And so, they become masters of performance. But beneath every polite smile, every thoughtful gesture, and every apology that comes too quickly, there lives a quiet ache. It hums beneath the skin, whispering the same question again and again. Would you still love me if I did nothing at all? This story is about that question, about the invisible labor of trying to deserve affection, and the deep human longing to rest, to be loved simply because you exist. There are people who move through life quietly starving, not for food, not for success, but for a kind of love that never has to be earned. They rarely say this aloud. Instead, they learn to smile when they're tired, to nod when they disagree, to help before they are asked. They become dependable, admirable, endlessly understanding. On the surface, they seem whole, but beneath their calm exterior, there is a quiet ache that follows them everywhere, a longing to be loved for who they are when they're not performing for it. This hunger doesn't begin as pride or selfishness. It begins as survival. When love becomes something you must work for, you begin to believe that peace, safety, and belonging must also be earned. The child who once wanted to be held learns instead to be helpful. The teenager who longed to be seen becomes the one who listens. The adult who needed to be cared for becomes the caretaker. They tell themselves it's just their nature to give. But deep down, they know giving is how they stay close to people, how they make sure they're not forgotten. Every gesture, every act of kindness carries a silent question. Will you still love me if I stop trying so hard? They measure their worth by how useful they are. They feel safest when they're needed, most loved when they're praised, and most anxious when they rest. Stillness feels dangerous because, in stillness, they can no longer prove their value. They aren't greedy for attention. They're desperate for rest. They want to exhale without guilt, to be loved in imperfection, to exist without effort. Yet even in relationships, they keep earning. They overthink every word, apologize for things beyond control, and anticipate needs before their own emotions have time to surface. When affection comes, they flinch, unsure if they truly deserve it or if it's just another test. This is how the quiet hunger survives, hidden under politeness, disguised as strength, and carried like a secret no one notices, until it becomes too heavy to hide. No one is born believing they must earn love. It's something we learn. In early life, children look to their caregivers to understand what makes them worthy. When love is consistent, they grow into adults who trust it. But when affection depends on behavior, on grades, on silence, on being good, something shifts. The child begins to link love with performance. They notice that warmth arrives when they excel, and distance follows when they fail. So they adapt. They learn which versions of themselves are safe and which are not. Psychologists call this conditional attachment, a pattern where affection is given as reward, not as presence. A hug after a good report card, a cold silence after disappointment. Each moment quietly rewires the child's understanding of love. Soon, they stop asking for comfort. They learn that neediness is shameful, that crying makes them too much. So they shrink their emotions and fill the empty spaces with effort. This is the beginning of the earned love cycle, where approval replaces affection and performance becomes the price of belonging. As they grow, these children often appear mature beyond their years. They read rooms before they read books. They sense moods faster than they sense their own. Their empathy becomes survival. Their care becomes currency. To outsiders, they seem well-adjusted, even gifted. But inside, they're learning a quieter truth: that safety depends on staying small, agreeable, and perfect. When they finally become adults, they don't stop this pattern. They refine it. It becomes their second language, spoken fluently in relationships, workplaces, and friendships. They no longer remember what it felt like to simply receive love. And in that forgetting, the foundation of their emotional world is set. Love must be earned, or it disappears. At its core, the need to earn love is a neurological loop. Every time approval is received, the brain rewards it with a pulse of dopamine, a brief, soothing confirmation that we are safe. Over time, the brain learns to crave that reward. It begins to mistake validation for survival. So even when someone offers love freely, the mind resists. It asks, "What did I do to deserve this?" Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, when unpredictable affection creates the strongest attachment. The less consistent the love, the harder we work for it. It's the same mechanism that keeps people addicted to gambling, social media likes, or praise. A hit of approval, a breath of relief, then emptiness again. The brain doesn't seek happiness, it seeks familiarity. If love once meant uncertainty, the body learns to find comfort in anxiety. And so, people chase relationships that mirror their earliest emotional environment, half warmth, half withdrawal. This loop quietly shapes self-worth. It blurs the line between affection and achievement. Even compliments become confusing. Do they mean it? Or are they just being kind? For someone trapped in this pattern, love begins to feel like labor, and peace begins to feel like loss. It's not their fault. It's chemistry, memory, and fear intertwining, creating a rhythm that feels impossible to break. But beneath the biology lies a truth deeper than science. The human heart doesn't actually crave praise. It craves presence. It wants to be held in stillness, not applauded for effort. It wants to exist without condition. Inside every person who earns love, there's a quiet war. One side longs to be known. The other fears that if they are, they'll lose everything. They crave intimacy, but guard themselves carefully. They fear abandonment, but choose partners who make them prove their worth. They want peace, but only feel safe when working for it. This is the paradox of conditional love. It makes people both seekers and protectors, yearning for closeness while building walls to survive it. Emotionally, this conflict shows up as overfunctioning, taking responsibility for others' emotions, solving every problem, apologizing for existing. When they can't fix things, they spiral into guilt. When they do fix things, they feel invisible. They live between two fears: being too much and not enough. Every interaction becomes a calculation: what to say, how to appear, how to stay lovable. But no one can sustain perfection forever. Eventually, exhaustion sets in. Moments of numbness appear, silent afternoons where they feel nothing at all. This isn't coldness, it's protection. It's the body's way of saying, "I can't keep earning anymore." They call it burnout, Psychologists call it emotional depletion, but in truth, it's heartbreak, the soul's quiet rebellion against the endless proving. In this space between desire and fear, a question begins to echo. What would happen if I stopped trying? The answer, though terrifying, is where healing begins. The realization doesn't come suddenly. It arrives softly, often in moments of collapse, when effort stops working. Maybe they've done everything right and still feel unloved. Maybe someone finally says, "You don't have to try so hard." Maybe silence, for once, feels kinder than approval. Whatever form it takes, the truth emerges. Love isn't something to earn, it's something to remember. This moment is both painful and freeing, because to admit it means confronting the years spent mistaking worth for usefulness. It means grieving the child who learned to trade authenticity for affection. They begin to see how often they've overextended themselves, how rarely they've asked for help, how many times they've said, "I'm fine," when they were quietly falling apart. There's no shame here, only awareness, because this is what awakening looks like, realizing the difference between love and approval. Love doesn't demand performance. It doesn't fade when you rest. It doesn't keep score. Approval feels conditional. Love feels calm. Approval disappears under imperfection. Love stays. Approval is borrowed. Love is remembered. This realization doesn't erase the pain, it redefines it. Because once someone understands that love isn't a transaction, they start noticing who truly sees them, who listens without fixing, who stays even when they have nothing to give. It's in those small, steady presences that healing quietly begins. Receiving love after years of earning it feels unnatural. At first, it even feels wrong. When someone offers kindness without condition, they instinctively push it away, deflect it with humor, repay it immediately, or shrink under its weight, because somewhere inside, they still believe love is a debt. Learning to receive is an act of courage. It means allowing others to care without proof. It means saying, "Thank you," instead of "you shouldn't have." It means letting affection land instead of dissecting it for hidden meaning. Therapists call this repatterning, rewiring the emotional response from suspicion to safety. It takes time, patience, and gentleness. Often, it begins in small ways, accepting a compliment, resting without guilt, sharing a need before it becomes resentment. Slowly, love begins to feel less like performance and more like presence. They realize they don't have to be useful to be worthy, that they can exist in someone's life simply because they are loved. The work here isn't to become deserving, it's to remember that they already are. In time, the hunger softens, not because it's gone, but because it has finally been acknowledged. They no longer chase love, they allow it. They no longer earn affection, they receive it. And for the first time, they can rest without fear of disappearing. This is the gentle return, the homecoming to oneself, to the truth that love was never meant to be conditional. That existence, in its quiet imperfection, is already enough. They still give, still care, still help, but not to prove worth. They do it from peace, not fear, because they've learned that love freely given does not demand exhaustion in return. And in that stillness, a new kind of silence emerges. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of being seen. The unspoken desire to be loved without. Earning it was never a flaw. It was always a memory. The soul remembering what love was meant to be all along.